Imagine being at the peak of your career as a tech mogul, only to have your world shattered by a devastating helicopter crash that leaves you paralyzed from the waist down. Then, as you're adjusting to your new reality, you experience a deeply traumatic incident during a rehabilitation retreat, resulting in an unexpected pregnancy. But the challenges don't stop there. Your husband's past indiscretions come to light, threatening to unravel the very foundation of your marriage. How would you navigate a series of life-altering events like these? Would you retreat into despair or find the strength to carve out a new path, redefining your own concepts of love, family, and personal growth? This is the story of Stella Blackwood. Stay until the end and be amazed by this emotional narrative, packed with breathtaking twists and turns. The gleaming spire of the Chrysler Building pierced the early morning sky, its Art Deco crown catching the first rays of sunlight. In the penthouse of a nearby luxury high-rise, Stella Blackwood stirred awake, her eyes fluttering open to take in the panoramic view of Manhattan through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 42, Stella was the epitome of success, a self-made tech mogul whose company, Nextech Innovations, had revolutionized the way people interacted with artificial intelligence in their daily lives. As she swung her legs out of bed, her bare feet meeting the cool marble floor, Stella caught a glimpse of herself in the full-length mirror. Her auburn hair, cut in a sleek bob, framed a face that graced the covers of business magazines and inspired countless young women in STEM fields. She padded over to the window, gazing out at the city she'd conquered, a small smile playing on her lips. "Another day, another world to change," she murmured to herself, a mantra that had carried her from a small-town prodigy to the pinnacle of the tech world. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, drawing Stella to the kitchen. There, hunched over the island counter, sat Hudson Blackwood, her husband of 7 years. At 45, Hudson was a picture of rugged charm, salt and pepper hair, chiseled features, and hands that had performed miracles in operating rooms across the city. As one of New York's most sought-after plastic surgeons, he matched Stella in ambition and drive. "Morning, beautiful," Hudson said, looking up from his medical journal with a warm smile. "Ready to take on the world?" Stella leaned in, kissing him softly. "Always, but first, coffee." As she poured herself a cup, Stella's mind was already racing with the day ahead. A board meeting at 9, a lunch with potential investors at noon, and then a helicopter ride to Boston for a tech conference where she was the keynote speaker. It was a schedule that would make most people's heads spin, but for Stella, it was just another Tuesday. "Don't forget we have that charity gala tonight," Hudson reminded her, his voice a mix of excitement and gentle prodding. He knew how easy it was for Stella to get lost in her work. "Right, the Children's Hospital fundraiser," Stella nodded, mentally rearranging her schedule. "I'll be back in time, I promise." As she dressed in a tailored Armani suit, Stella couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She had everything: a thriving career, a loving husband, a home most people could only dream of. Life was perfect, or so it seemed. The day unfolded like a well-oiled machine. Stella dominated the board meeting, securing unanimous approval for Nextech's latest AI integration project. Lunch with investors went even better, with promises of substantial funding for her next big idea, an AI-driven medical diagnosis tool that could revolutionize healthcare in underserved communities. As her sleek black helicopter lifted off from the downtown helipad, Stella felt that familiar rush of adrenaline. The city fell away beneath her, a glittering tapestry of human ambition and dreams. She pulled out her tablet, going over her speech one last time. It was a talk about the future of AI and its potential to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. Stella believed in the power of technology to change the world, and her passion was infectious. The first sign that something was wrong came halfway through the flight. A sudden lurch, followed by an alarming whine from the engine. Stella looked up, meeting the pilot's eyes in the rearview mirror. She saw something she'd never seen before in the eyes of her usually unflappable flight crew: fear. "Ms. Blackwood, we're experiencing some technical difficulties," the pilot's voice crackled through her headset, straining for calm. "I'm going to attempt an emergency landing." Stella's heart raced, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The ground was coming up fast, too fast. Trees blurred past the windows as the pilot fought for control. In those terrifying moments, Stella's life didn't flash before her eyes. Instead, her thoughts fixated on Hudson, on the life they'd built together, on all the things left unsaid and undone. The impact when it came was deafening. Metal screamed against earth and wood. Stella felt herself thrown forward. Then everything went black. She awoke to the steady beep of hospital monitors and the antiseptic smell of a private room at New York Presbyterian. Hudson was there, his face haggard with worry and lack of sleep. As Stella's eyes focused, she saw something in his expression that sent a chill through her, a mix of relief and devastating sorrow. "Stella, thank God," Hudson breathed, grasping her hand. "I thought I'd lost you." Stella tried to speak, but her throat was dry and raw. Hudson quickly offered her some water, his doctor's instincts kicking in. As she sipped, Stella became aware of a strange sensation, or rather, a lack of sensation. She couldn't feel her legs. The realization must have shown on her face because Hudson's expression crumpled. "Stella, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "The crash. There was severe trauma to your spinal cord." The words hit Stella like a physical blow. "Are you saying—" she started, unable to finish the sentence. Hudson nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "You're paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors, they're not sure if it's permanent, but—" Stella's world, so carefully constructed and controlled, came crashing down around her. The room seemed to spin and she closed her eyes, trying to shut out the reality of what she'd just heard. But when she opened them again, nothing had changed. Hudson was still there, looking broken and helpless, and she still couldn't feel her legs. In the days that followed, Stella's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The woman who had strode confidently through boardrooms and commanded the attention of thousands now found herself struggling with the most basic tasks. Simple things like getting out of bed or using the bathroom became monumental challenges, requiring assistance and robbing her of the independence she'd always prized. Hudson was there every step of the way, his surgical practice put on hold as he devoted himself to Stella's care and recovery. But even his unwavering support couldn't ease the deep sense of loss and frustration that consumed Stella. She watched from her hospital bed as the world moved on without her. Nextech stock took a hit. Investors grew nervous and competitors circled like sharks, scenting blood in the water. One afternoon, about a week after the accident, Stella found herself alone in her hospital room. Hudson had stepped out to consult with her doctors, and for the first time since the crash, she had a moment of true solitude. She looked down at her motionless legs, willing them to move, to feel something, anything, but they remained stubbornly still. A wave of anger washed over her, sudden and violent. With a cry of frustration, Stella swept the items off her bedside table, sending magazines, flowers, and get-well cards clattering to the floor. The noise brought a nurse running, but Stella waved her away, not wanting anyone to witness her moment of weakness. As the initial shock and anger began to subside, a new emotion took hold: determination. Stella Blackwood had not built an empire by giving up in the face of adversity. She'd faced sexism in the tech industry, weathered financial crises, and outmaneuvered cutthroat competitors. This was just another challenge to overcome. With trembling hands, Stella reached for her tablet. Her fingers flew across the screen as she began to research spinal cord injuries, rehabilitation techniques, and cutting-edge treatments. She devoured medical journals, reached out to specialists around the world, and began to formulate a plan. When Hudson returned, he found Stella sitting up in bed, her eyes blazing with a familiar fire. "I need you to bring me my laptop and set up a video conference with the board," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "And then I want to talk to our R&D team. If anyone can find a technological solution to spinal cord injuries, it's Nextech." Hudson hesitated, concern etched on his face. "Stella, you need to rest. Your body has been through a tremendous trauma." Stella fixed him with a steely gaze. "What I need is to get back to work. I'm not going to let this define me, Hudson. I'm going to beat this, and I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to do it." As the words left her mouth, Stella felt a spark of her old self returning. The road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with physical and emotional challenges she could scarcely imagine. But in that moment, lying in a hospital bed with her world forever altered, Stella made a vow to herself. She would not only survive this, she would thrive. And in doing so, she would change the world in ways she'd never dreamed possible. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, the old proverb says. For Stella Blackwood, Unable to take that step herself, the journey would begin with a single thought, a spark of innovation that would set her on a path to redefine the very nature of human ability and resilience. As Hudson set up her laptop, Stella's mind was already racing with possibilities. The woman who had connected the world through AI was about to embark on her greatest challenge yet, reconnecting her own body and, in the process, paving the way for millions of others facing similar struggles. The stage was set for a story of ambition, love, and the indomitable human spirit. A tale that would push Stella to her limits and force her to confront not just her physical limitations, but the very essence of what it means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by technology. The sleek glass elevator hummed as it ascended to the penthouse of the Blackwood residence. Inside, Stella sat in her high-tech wheelchair, her fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the armrest. It had been 3 months since the accident, and each day brought new challenges and frustrations. As the doors slid open, Stella was greeted by a flurry of activity. What was once a luxurious living space had been transformed into a bustling command center of cutting-edge technology. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, and a team of engineers huddled around a prototype exoskeleton in the corner. "Welcome home, Ms. Blackwood," chirped an AI assistant as Stella maneuvered her chair into the room. "Your 2 p.m. video conference is set up in the study." Stella nodded, her eyes scanning the room. The transformation of her home into this tech hub had been her first major project after leaving the hospital. If she couldn't go to the office, she'd bring the office to her. It was a testament to her determination, but also a constant reminder of how much her life had changed. As she made her way to the study, Stella caught sight of her reflection in a darkened screen. The woman staring back at her was a far cry from the polished executive of a few months ago. Her hair, once meticulously styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dark circles ringed her eyes, evidence of long nights spent working and worrying. The video conference was with her medical team, led by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a world-renowned expert in spinal cord injuries. As the doctor's face appeared on the screen, Stella steeled herself for the update. "Ms. Blackwood," Dr. Rodriguez began, her tone careful, "I've reviewed your latest scans. While there's been some improvement in nerve response, I'm afraid the damage is extensive." Stella felt her heart sink, but kept her face impassive. "What are you saying, doctor? The chances of you regaining full mobility are slim," Dr. Rodriguez said gently. "However, with continued therapy and perhaps some experimental treatments, we might see significant improvements in your quality of life." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Stella thanked the doctor, ended the call, and sat in silence for a long moment. Then, with a determined set to her jaw, she turned to her computer and pulled up the schematics for Nextech's latest project, a neural interface designed to bypass damaged nerve pathways. "If traditional medicine can't fix this," she muttered to herself, "then I'll find a way to do it myself." As weeks turned into months, Stella threw herself into her work with a fervor that both impressed and worried those around her. Nextech's stock rebounded as news of their groundbreaking medical tech made headlines, but while Stella's professional life flourished, her personal life began to show signs of strain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, Hudson found Stella in her makeshift lab poring over test results. "Stella," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder, "it's past midnight. You need to rest." Stella shrugged off his hand, not looking up from her tablet. "I'm fine. I'm close to a breakthrough on the neural interface, just a few more hours and—" "Stella, stop!" Hudson's voice was firm. "You can't keep pushing yourself like this. It's not healthy." Finally, Stella looked up, her eyes blazing. "Not healthy? Hudson, I'm paralyzed. Nothing about this is healthy, but I can fix it. I know I can." Hudson knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands in his. "I know you're frustrated, but you're not alone in this. We're a team, remember, in sickness and in health." Stella's expression softened slightly. "I know, I feel so powerless sometimes. This work, it's the only thing that makes me feel like myself again." Hudson hesitated, then spoke. "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we revisited the idea of starting a family. The doctors said there's no reason you can't carry a child to term, even with your injury." The suggestion caught Stella off guard. They had discussed having children before the accident, but it had always seemed like something for the future, when their careers were more established. Now, The idea filled her with a mix of longing and fear. I don't know, Hudson. With everything going on, is this really the right time? Hudson smiled encouragingly. There's never a perfect time. But maybe this is exactly what we need. Something to look forward to plan for. A reason to slow down and focus on what really matters. The seed planted that night took root in Stella's mind. Over the next few weeks, between board meetings and physical therapy sessions, she found herself researching fertility treatments. The idea of creating life, of nurturing something that was a part of her and Hudson, began to appeal to her in a way she hadn't expected. Their first attempt at in vitro fertilization came 6 months after the accident. Stella approached it with the same determination she brought to her business ventures, meticulously following every recommendation from their fertility specialist. The day of the pregnancy test arrived, filled with nervous anticipation. As Stella waited for the results, she allowed herself to imagine a future with a child, a little girl with Hudson's eyes and her own stubborn determination, or a boy with a knack for technology and his father's compassionate heart. When the test came back negative, the disappointment was crushing. Hudson held her as she cried, her body shaking with sobs she had held back for months. "It's okay," he whispered, stroking her hair. "We'll try again. We're not giving up." And try again they did. Over the next year, Stella and Hudson went through 3 more rounds of IVF, each failure hitting harder than the last. The strain began to show in their relationship. Arguments became more frequent, often triggered by small frustrations that masked deeper fears and insecurities. It was after their 4th failed attempt that Dr. Rodriguez suggested a change of scenery. "There's a rehabilitation retreat in Colorado," she explained during one of their regular check-ins. "It's a holistic program, physical therapy, counseling, even some alternative treatments. I think it could be beneficial for both your physical and emotional well-being." Stella was skeptical at first. She had always been a city person, and the idea of spending weeks in some mountaintop retreat seemed like a waste of valuable time. But as she looked around her high-tech cocoon, she realized that perhaps a change was exactly what she needed. "All right," she agreed reluctantly. "I'll give it a try." The Evergreen Rehabilitation Center was nestled in the Rocky Mountains, a world away from the hustle and bustle of Manhattan. As Stella's private car wound its way up the mountain road, she felt a mix of apprehension and a strange sense of relief. Here, away from the pressures of next tech and the constant reminders of her limitations, maybe she could find a new perspective. The first week was challenging. Stella bristled at the structured routine and the enforced tech-free periods, but gradually she began to appreciate the peace of the mountains and the camaraderie of the other patients. For the first time since the accident, she was surrounded by people who truly understood what she was going through. It was during her 2nd week at Evergreen that Stella met Cynthia, a former Paralympic athlete who had become a motivational speaker after a car accident left her paralyzed. Cynthia's positive attitude and zest for life were infectious, and Stella found herself opening up in ways she hadn't since the accident. "You know," Cynthia said one afternoon as they sat by the center's lake, "when I first got injured, I thought my life was over. But then I realized it wasn't over. It was just beginning in a different way than I had planned." Stella considered this. "How did you come to terms with it? The loss of your old life?" Cynthia smiled. "I grieved for it, sure. But then I started to see all the new possibilities. The accident took away my ability to walk, but it gave me a platform to inspire others. It's all about perspective." These conversations, combined with the intensive physical therapy and counseling sessions, began to shift something in Stella. She started to see her injury not as an end, but as a new beginning. Ideas for adaptive technologies began to form in her mind, innovations that could help not just her, but millions of others facing similar challenges. As her 3-week stay at Evergreen drew to a close, Stella felt rejuvenated. She was eager to return home, to share her new outlook with Hudson, and to implement some of the ideas she had developed during her time away. On her last night at the center, Stella decided to take one final swim in the heated therapy pool. The water had become a sanctuary for her, a place where she could move freely, unencumbered by her wheelchair. As she floated on her back, staring up at the star-filled sky, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. Lost in thought, Stella didn't notice at first when the lights around the pool flickered and went out. It was only when she heard an unfamiliar voice that she realized something was wrong. Well, What do we have here? Stella turned in the water, her heart racing. A figure stood at the edge of the pool, silhouetted against the darkness. It was a man she didn't recognize, not one of the center's staff. "Who are you?" Stella demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're not supposed to be here." The man chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Stella's spine. "Oh, I know, but you see, when the security systems go down, all sorts of opportunities present themselves." With growing horror, Stella realized the gravity of her situation. She was alone, vulnerable, trapped in the water with no way to quickly get to her wheelchair. Her mind raced, trying to formulate a plan, but panic was setting in. What happened next was a blur of terror and pain. The man entered the pool, his intentions clear. Stella fought with every ounce of strength she had, but her paralyzed legs made it an uneven battle. She screamed, but the remote location of the pool meant there was no one close enough to hear. When it was over, the man disappeared into the night, leaving Stella floating in the pool, shattered and in shock. It was hours before she was found by a member of the night staff, alerted by the malfunctioning security system. The aftermath was a whirlwind of police reports, medical examinations, and hushed conversations. The center's management was horrified, promising a full investigation and offering Stella their complete support. But all Stella wanted was to go home, to retreat to the safety of her high-tech fortress and pretend this nightmare had never happened. As her private jet took off from Colorado, bound for New York, Stella sat in silence, staring out the window. She had declined to press charges, using her considerable influence to keep the incident out of the press. The thought of the world knowing what had happened, of seeing pity in the eyes of her colleagues and competitors, was unbearable. Hudson met her at the airport, his face etched with concern. Stella had told him there had been an incident at the center, but hadn't shared the details. As he embraced her, she stiffened, the memory of that night still raw. "Stella, what happened?" Hudson asked gently as they rode home in their private car. "You're not yourself." Stella turned to look out the window, unable to meet his eyes. "I don't want to talk about it," she said flatly. "It's over. I just want to get back to work." The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of Stella's life. She threw herself into her work with renewed intensity, often staying up for days at a time, fueled by coffee and sheer determination. Hudson watched helplessly as she pushed herself to the brink, unsure how to reach her. It was nearly 2 months after the Colorado incident that Stella first noticed the changes in her body. At first, she dismissed the fatigue and nausea as side effects of her grueling work schedule, but as the symptoms persisted, a terrifying possibility began to take shape in her mind. Late one night, alone in her bathroom, Stella took a pregnancy test. As she waited for the results, her mind raced with conflicting emotions. Part of her desperately hoped for a negative result, to erase this last lingering effect of that horrible night. But another part, a part she was almost afraid to acknowledge, felt a glimmer of hope. When the test showed positive, Stella felt the world shift beneath her. She stared at the little pink lines, her vision blurring with tears. This child, conceived in violence and fear, was also the thing she and Hudson had been trying so hard to create. It was a cruel twist of fate, a blessing and a curse intertwined. As dawn broke over the city, Stella sat in her wheelchair by the window, the positive pregnancy test clutched in her hand. She was faced with an impossible decision. To keep this child would mean living with a constant reminder of the worst night of her life. But to end the pregnancy felt like giving up on the dream she and Hudson had been chasing for so long. Moreover, there was Hudson to consider. How could she tell him about the pregnancy without revealing the circumstances of its conception? The thought of confessing what had happened in Colorado filled her with shame and fear. Would he look at her differently? Would he resent the child? As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Stella made a decision. She would keep the baby. This child, regardless of its origins, was innocent, and perhaps in nurturing this new life, she could find a way to heal her own wounds. But with this decision came a heavy burden. Stella knew she would have to lie to Hudson, to let him believe that their final round of IVF had miraculously succeeded. The thought of building their family on a foundation of deception made her feel sick, but she saw no other way. As she heard Hudson stirring in the bedroom, Stella took a deep breath and composed herself. She would tell him about the pregnancy today, watch his face light up with joy, and carry the weight of her secret alone. It was a burden she would bear to protect the ones she loved, even as it threatened to tear her apart. The stage was set for a complex web of emotions and moral dilemmas. Stella, once so certain of her path in life, now found herself navigating treacherous waters, where every decision carried the potential for both healing and heartbreak. As she placed a hand on her still flat stomach, she whispered a quiet promise to the life growing within her. "We'll get through this," she murmured, as much to herself as to the baby. "Somehow, we'll find a way." With that, Stella steeled herself and wheeled out of the bathroom, ready to share her joyous news with Hudson. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, testing the limits of love, trust, and forgiveness. But for now, she would embrace this moment of hope, even as the shadows of her secret threatened to eclipse it. The crisp autumn air carried a hint of change as Stella maneuvered her wheelchair onto the balcony of their penthouse. At 5 months pregnant, her growing belly was becoming more noticeable, a constant reminder of the secret she carried. She gazed out at the New York skyline, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars, and allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions. Hudson's joy at the news of her pregnancy had been overwhelming, his face lighting up with a happiness she hadn't seen since before the accident. It made the weight of her deception even heavier. Every prenatal appointment, every late-night craving run, every loving touch of Hudson's hand on her belly was both a blessing and a torment. Stella was pulled from her reverie by the sound of the elevator arriving. Hudson stepped out, his medical bag in hand, looking tired but content after a long day of surgeries. "There's my 2 favorite people," he said with a warm smile, crossing the room to plant a kiss on Stella's cheek and gently caress her bump. "How are you feeling today?" Stella forced a smile. "We're good. Just enjoying the view." Hudson's phone buzzed, and as he checked it, a small frown creased his brow. "That's odd," he muttered. "What is it?" Stella asked, a note of concern in her voice. Hudson shook his head slightly. "Oh, it's nothing. Just an old friend asking to meet up. I haven't heard from her in years." Something in his tone made Stella's heart skip a beat. "Her? Yeah, Hannah Reeves. We went to med school together. She's in town and wants to grab coffee." Hudson's voice was casual, but there was an undercurrent of something, nervousness, excitement. The name struck a chord in Stella's memory. Hannah Reeves. She remembered seeing photos of her in Hudson's old yearbooks, a stunning blonde with a megawatt smile, and if Stella recalled correctly, a reputation for being as brilliant as she was beautiful. "That's nice," Stella said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "It'll be good for you to catch up with an old friend." Hudson nodded, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "Yeah, I suppose so. Anyway, how about some dinner? I'm starving." As they moved inside, Stella couldn't shake a feeling of unease. It was probably nothing, she told herself, just pregnancy hormones making her paranoid. But as she watched Hudson move around the kitchen, she couldn't help but notice a new spring in his step, a lightness that hadn't been there before. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and prenatal appointments. Stella threw herself into a new project at Nextech, developing adaptive technologies for children with disabilities. It was meaningful work, inspired in part by her own experiences and the impending arrival of her child, but it also served as a welcome distraction from the growing tension at home. Hudson had met with Hannah several times, always explaining them away as casual catch-ups between old friends. But Stella noticed changes, hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when she entered the room, a new cologne she didn't recognize, late nights at the office that he struggled to explain. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Stella had just finished a video conference with her board of directors when her assistant buzzed through. "Ms. Blackwood, there's a Hannah Reeves here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." Stella felt her blood run cold. "Send her in," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. Hannah Reeves was every bit as beautiful as her photos suggested, perhaps even more so in person. She strode into the office with the confidence of a runway model, her blue eyes taking in the high-tech surroundings before settling on Stella. "So you're the famous Stella Blackwood," Hannah said, her voice a perfect blend of honey and venom. "I can see why Hudson's so devoted." Stella steeled herself, years of boardroom battles coming to her aid. "Ms. Reeves, to what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Hannah's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, I think you know why I'm here, Stella. May I call you Stella? I feel like we should be on a first-name basis, given the circumstances." "And what circumstances would those be?" Stella asked, her tone icy. Hannah's hand moved to her stomach, and Stella felt her world tilt on its axis. "Well, you see, Hudson and I have a little situation, one that's going to complicate things for all of us." As Hannah laid out her story, a rekindled romance, a night of passion, and now an unexpected pregnancy, Stella felt as though she were watching the scene from outside her body. It was like a cruel mirror of her own secret, twisted and distorted. "What do you want?" Stella finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hannah's eyes glittered. "Well, that's the question, isn't it? I'm not looking to break up a happy home, but raising a child is expensive, especially in New York. I'm sure we can come to some sort of arrangement." The implications were clear. Hannah was here for money, and she was willing to use her pregnancy as leverage. As she left, her threat hanging in the air like a noxious cloud, Stella felt her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. That night, as Hudson slept peacefully beside her, Stella lay awake, her mind racing. Should she confront him? Reveal her own secret? The thought made her feel physically ill. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, Stella made a decision. She needed help, someone she could trust, someone outside of this tangled web of secrets and lies. It was in this state of emotional turmoil that Stella attended the annual Tech for Humanity Gala the following evening. Hudson had begged off, claiming a last-minute surgery, and Stella found herself grateful for his absence. As she navigated the crowded ballroom in her wheelchair, nodding and smiling at familiar faces, she felt more alone than ever. "Miss Blackwood? Stella?" A deep, warm voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up to see a tall, distinguished-looking man with kind eyes and salt-and-pepper hair. "I'm Nicholas Hawthorne. I've been hoping to meet you for quite some time." Stella recognized the name immediately. Nicholas Hawthorne was a legend in philanthropic circles, a billionaire who had made his fortune in sustainable energy and now devoted his life to using technology to solve global problems. "Mr. Hawthorne, it's an honor," Stella said, shaking his offered hand. "Your work in renewable energy is truly inspiring." Nicholas smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Please call me Nicholas, and the honor is all mine. Your advances in adaptive tech are revolutionary. In fact, I was hoping to discuss a potential collaboration." As they talked, Stella felt some of the tension of the past few weeks begin to ease. Nicholas was brilliant, passionate, and surprisingly easy to talk to. He listened intently as she described her latest projects, offering insights and suggestions that left her mind buzzing with new possibilities. "You know," Nicholas said as the evening wound down, "I have a research facility upstate. We're doing some groundbreaking work in neural interfaces that I think would align perfectly with your goals. Would you be interested in taking a tour sometime?" Stella found herself nodding enthusiastically. "I'd love to. It sounds fascinating." As her driver helped her into her car at the end of the night, Stella realized she was smiling for the first time in weeks. The interaction with Nicholas had been a breath of fresh air, a reminder of why she had fallen in love with technology in the first place. Over the next few weeks, Stella found herself spending more and more time with Nicholas. What started as a professional collaboration quickly blossomed into a friendship. Nicholas was everything Hudson used to be, attentive, understanding, and genuinely interested in her work and her well-being. During one of their meetings at Nicholas's upstate facility, as they watched a demonstration of a new robotic limb controlled entirely by thought, Nicholas turned to Stella with a serious expression. "Stella, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I've noticed you seem troubled lately. Is everything all right?" The genuine concern in his voice almost broke through Stella's carefully constructed walls. For a moment, she was tempted to tell him everything, about the accident in Colorado, about Hannah, about the tangled web of lies she found herself trapped in. Instead, she took a deep breath. "It's just pregnancy hormones, I suppose, and the stress of running a company while preparing for a baby." Nicholas nodded sympathetically. "I can only imagine. But Stella, you should know, you're not alone. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." His words, so simple and yet so profound, brought tears to Stella's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, but not before Nicholas noticed. He reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. "Whatever it is, Stella, you'll get through it. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." In that moment, looking into Nicholas's kind eyes, Stella felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. It was a feeling she thought she'd lost forever, a spark of hope, of possibility. But as quickly as it came, guilt extinguished it. She was married, pregnant, embroiled in a web of secrets that threatened to destroy everything she'd built. And Nicholas deserved better than to be dragged into her mess. As Stella pulled her hand away, murmuring an excuse about needing to get back to the city, she didn't notice the look of longing that crossed Nicholas's face. Nor did she see the determination that settled in his eyes as he watched her leave. Back in Manhattan, the situation with Hudson was deteriorating rapidly. His absences became more frequent, his explanations more flimsy. Stella found herself torn between confronting him and maintaining the facade of normalcy for the sake of her pregnancy and her company. It all came to a head one stormy night in her 7th month of pregnancy. Stella had just returned from a late meeting to find Hudson pacing the living room, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. "Where have you been?" he demanded, his words slightly slurred. Stella's eyebrows rose. "I had a board meeting. You knew about this?" "Hudson, are you drunk?" He laughed, a bitter sound that sent chills down Stella's spine. "Am I drunk? That's rich coming from you. Where have you really been, Stella, with your new friend Nicholas?" The accusation hit Stella like a physical blow. "What are you talking about? Nicholas is a business associate, nothing more." "Don't lie to me," Hudson shouted, slamming his glass down on the coffee table. "I've seen the way you look at him, the way you light up when you talk about your little collaborations." Stella felt anger rising within her, hot and fierce. "How dare you accuse me of infidelity, when you're the one sneaking around with Hannah Reeves?" The moment the words left her mouth, Stella knew she'd made a mistake. Hudson's face drained of color, his eyes widening in shock. You know about Hannah?" Stella nodded, her throat tight. "She came to see me, told me everything. About your rekindled romance, about her pregnancy." Hudson collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "Stella, I can explain. It was a mistake. One night of weakness. I never meant for it to happen." "And the baby?" Stella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hudson looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "I don't know. She says it's mine, but I don't know." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Stella. Here they were, both carrying the weight of unplanned pregnancies, both terrified of the truth coming to light. In that moment, she was tempted to reveal her own secret, to lay bare the full extent of their shared deception. But as she opened her mouth to speak, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. Stella gasped, her hands flying to her swollen belly. "Stella!" Hudson was on his feet in an instant, doctor's instincts kicking in. "What's wrong?" "The baby!" Stella managed through gritted teeth. "Something's wrong with the baby!" The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and frantic medical jargon. As Stella was rushed into the emergency room, she caught a glimpse of Hudson's face, pale and drawn with worry. Despite everything in that moment, all she wanted was for him to hold her hand and tell her everything would be all right. But as the doctors swarmed around her, checking vitals and monitoring the baby's heartbeat, Stella knew that nothing would ever be all right again. The carefully constructed lie she had been living was about to come crashing down around her. As the head obstetrician reviewed her charts, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Mrs. Blackwood, there seems to be some discrepancy in your medical history. According to this, your last successful IVF treatment was... But that doesn't align with the gestational age of the fetus." Stella saw the moment realization dawned in Hudson's eyes. The color drained from his face as he looked from the doctor to Stella, disbelief warring with dawning comprehension. "Stella," he said, his voice barely audible over the beeping of the monitors. "What's going on? Whose baby is this?" As another contraction gripped her, Stella closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. The moment she had dreaded for months had finally arrived. There was no more running, no more hiding. It was time for the truth to come out, no matter the cost. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, Hudson. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't." Hudson's face crumpled, a mix of hurt, betrayal, and confusion washing over his features. "Couldn't tell me what, Stella? What have you done?" But before Stella could respond, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. The baby's heart rate had dropped dangerously low, and the doctors were preparing for an emergency C-section. As they wheeled Stella towards the operating room, she reached out for Hudson's hand. "Please," she begged, "stay with me. I'll explain everything, I promise. Just don't leave me." For a moment Hudson hesitated, the pain of betrayal clear in his eyes. But then, with a barely perceptible nod, he took her hand and followed the gurney into the operating room. As the anesthesia began to take effect, Stella's last conscious thought was of the tangled web of lies and secrets that had led them to this moment. She silently prayed that whatever happened next, her child, this innocent life caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes, would be okay. The steady beep of the heart monitor faded away, and Stella slipped into unconsciousness, unaware that the next time she opened her eyes, her world would be forever changed. The truth was about to come to light, and with it the power to shatter or reshape the foundations of everything she held dear. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room flickered to life as Stella slowly regained consciousness. The steady beep of monitors filled the air, a rhythmic reminder that she was still alive. As her vision cleared, she found herself staring into Hudson's eyes, filled with a mixture of relief, confusion, and hurt. "You're awake," he said softly, his voice hoarse from hours of worry. "The baby, she's okay. They have her in the NICU, but she's strong, just like her mother." Stella felt a flood of emotions wash over her, joy at the news of her daughter's survival, fear of the conversation to come, and an overwhelming sense of guilt that threatened to suffocate her. "Hudson," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you everything. You deserve the truth." He nodded slowly, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Yes, I think it's time for that." Taking a deep breath, Stella began to recount the events at the Evergreen Rehabilitation Center. The night by the pool, the attack, her decision to keep the pregnancy a secret. As she spoke, she watched Hudson's face cycle through a range of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief, and finally, a deep, profound sadness. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked when she finished, his voice cracking. "Stella, I'm your husband. We could have faced this together." Tears streamed down Stella's face as she replied, "I was ashamed, afraid. I didn't want you to look at me differently, to see me as broken or damaged. And then, when I found out I was pregnant, it felt like some twisted miracle. After all our failed attempts, here was this life growing inside me. I couldn't bear the thought of..." "Of what?" Hudson pressed, a hint of anger creeping into his voice. "Of me rejecting the baby, of me not loving you anymore. Stella, do you really think so little of me?" His words hit her like a physical blow. "No, Hudson, that's not it. I thought I could handle it on my own, that I could protect you from the pain." Hudson stood up abruptly, pacing the small hospital room. "Protect me? Stella, do you have any idea what you've done? The trust you've broken? I've been living with the guilt of my one night with Hannah, thinking I was the one who had betrayed our marriage. And all this time..." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Stella watched him, her heart breaking at the pain she had caused. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Hudson turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I need some air," he said finally. I can't process all of this right now. I'll check on the baby and I just need some time." As he left the room, Stella felt a wave of despair wash over her. She had feared this moment for months, but the reality of it was far worse than anything she had imagined. The weight of her decisions, the consequences of her lies, all came crashing down on her at once. Hours passed in a haze of nurses' checks, doctors' visits, and long stretches of lonely silence. Stella's mind raced, replaying every moment that had led to this, wondering how things might have been different if she had made other choices. It was late in the evening when Hudson returned, his face pale and drawn. He sat heavily in the chair beside her bed, looking older than Stella had ever seen him. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "about everything you told me. About what happened at Evergreen, about your pregnancy, about us." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I'm angry, Stella. Angry that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Angry that you've been carrying this burden alone all these months. But mostly I'm angry at the man who did this to you, and at myself for not seeing how much you were struggling." Stella reached out tentatively, taking his hand. To her relief, he didn't pull away. "Hudson, He shook his head, cutting her off. "Let me finish. What happened to you was not your fault. And this baby, our daughter, she's innocent in all of this. I want to be there for both of you, to help you heal, to be a father to our child. But Stella, we can't go back to the way things were. There's been too much deception, too many secrets. If we're going to move forward, we need to rebuild our relationship from the ground up. Complete honesty, no matter how difficult. Can you do that? Stella nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I can do that. I want to. I love you, Hudson. He squeezed her hand gently. I love you too, Stella. We'll get through this somehow. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions as Stella recovered from her surgery and spent time with her newborn daughter. They named her Hope, a symbol of their commitment to forging a new path together. As Stella held her tiny daughter in her arms, she marveled at the strength of this new life and vowed to be worthy of the second chance she had been given. However, life had one more curveball to throw their way. On the day Stella was to be discharged from the hospital, Hudson insisted on driving them home himself. As they made their way through the busy Manhattan streets, Hudson broached the subject of Hannah. I need to tell her about Hope, he said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. About our decision to raise her together. I owe her that much at least. Stella nodded, understanding the complex web of relationships they were all entangled in. Of course. Do you want me to come with you? Hudson shook his head. No, I think this is something I need to do alone, to give both of us closure. As they approached an intersection, the light turned green. Hudson began to accelerate, but Stella's sharp intake of breath made him turn to look at her. In that split second of distraction, neither of them saw the truck that ran the red light until it was too late. The impact was devastating. The car spun violently, metal crunching and glass shattering. When it finally came to a stop, Stella's world had once again been turned upside down. She was trapped in her seat, the airbag deployed in front of her, and beside her, Hudson lay motionless, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Hudson, she screamed, reaching for him with trembling hands. Hudson, please, wake up. But Hudson didn't wake up. Not as the paramedics arrived, not as they were rushed to the hospital, not as Stella, relatively unharmed thanks to her position in the reinforced wheelchair area of the car, watched them wheel him into emergency surgery. Hours passed in an agonizing blur. Stella sat in the waiting room, Hope cradled in her arms, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. When the doctor finally emerged, his grave expression told her everything before he even spoke. Mrs. Blackwood, your husband has suffered severe head trauma. We've managed to stabilize him, but he's in a coma. At this point, we can't say when or if he'll wake up. The words hit Stella like a physical blow. After everything they had been through, after finally finding a way forward together, fate had cruelly intervened once again. As the reality of the situation sank in, Stella felt a determination she hadn't known she possessed rise within her. What do we do now? She asked, her voice steady, despite the turmoil in her heart. How do we help him? The next weeks were a testament to Stella's resilience and determination. She threw herself into Hudson's care with the same intensity she had once reserved for her tech projects. She researched cutting-edge treatments, consulted with top neurologists, and spent hours by Hudson's bedside, talking to him, playing his favorite music, and introducing him to their daughter. It was during one of these bedside vigils that Nicholas Hawthorne found her. He had heard about the accident and had come to offer his support. As he took in the sight of Stella, holding Hope in one arm while gently stroking Hudson's hand with the other, his heart ached for her. Stella, he said softly, not wanting to startle her, I came as soon as I heard. Is there anything I can do? Stella looked up, a mixture of gratitude and exhaustion in her eyes. Nicholas, thank you for coming. I don't know what to do. The doctors, they're not very optimistic. Nicholas moved closer, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Tell me what you need. Anything at all. And so began a new chapter in Stella and Nicholas's relationship. With Hudson in a coma and a newborn to care for, Stella found herself leaning on Nicholas more than she ever thought she would. He became a constant presence, helping with Hope, managing Stella's business affairs, and providing emotional support when the weight of it all became too much to bear. One evening, as they sat in the hospital cafeteria, sharing a quick dinner between Hope's feedings and Hudson's checkups, Nicholas broached a subject that had been on his mind. Stella, he began cautiously, I've been thinking about Hudson's condition. You know, my company has been doing some groundbreaking work in neural interfaces. I wonder if you'd be open to trying an experimental treatment. Stella's eyes widened. Experimental? What kind of treatment? Nicholas leaned forward, his eyes alight with the passion he always got when discussing his work. It's a new type of brain-computer interface. The idea is to stimulate neural pathways, potentially helping coma patients regain consciousness. It's still in the early stages, but the preliminary results have been promising. Stella felt a glimmer of hope, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in weeks. And you think it could help Hudson? Nicholas nodded. I think it's worth a try. Of course, we'd need to run it by his doctors, get all the proper approvals. But Stella, if there's a chance it could bring him back to you, to hope. Tears welled up in Stella's eyes. Thank you, Nicholas, for everything. I don't know how I would have gotten through these past weeks without you. Nicholas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. You don't have to thank me, Stella. I care about you. Both of you. There was a moment of charged silence, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. Stella felt a flutter in her chest, a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time, but along with it came a wave of guilt. Here she was, her husband lying in a hospital bed, and she was having feelings for another man. Before either of them could say anything more, Stella's phone buzzed. It was a text from the private investigator she had hired to look into Hannah's claims about her pregnancy. Her heart raced as she read the message. Nicholas, she said, her voice tight with tension, I need to go. There's something I have to take care of. An hour later, Stella found herself face to face with Hannah in a quiet corner of Central Park. The blonde looked nervous, fidgeting with her designer handbag as Stella's wheelchair came to a stop in front of her. I know you've been lying, Hannah, Stella said without preamble. About the pregnancy, about Hudson, all of it. Hannah's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Stella's laugh was bitter. Save it, I have proof. Medical records showing you had a hysterectomy 3 years ago. Bank statements revealing large transfers from an offshore account right after each of your meetings with Hudson. It was all a con, wasn't it? A way to extort money from us. For a moment, Hannah looked like she might try to deny it again. Then her shoulders sagged and the facade crumbled. Fine, yes, it was a con. But can you blame me? You two had it all, the perfect life, more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I just wanted a piece of that. Stella felt a complex mix of emotions, anger at the deception, relief that Hudson hadn't actually betrayed her, and a strange sort of pity for the desperation that would drive someone to such lengths. Why, Hannah? Why go to all this trouble? Hannah's laugh was hollow. Why? Look at you, Stella. Even paralyzed, even with everything you've been through, you still have it all. The loving husband, the successful company, and now a baby. Some of us aren't that lucky. Some of us have to fight and claw for every scrap we get. Stella shook her head, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. What do you want now, Hannah? Money to keep quiet about all this? To her surprise, Hannah's eyes filled with tears. I don't want anything. I heard about Hudson's accident. Despite everything, I never wanted him to get hurt. I'm sorry, Stella, for all of it. As Hannah walked away, disappearing into the bustling New York crowd, Stella sat in stunned silence. The revelation of Hannah's deception should have been a relief, a weight lifted off her shoulders. Instead, it only added to the tumult of emotions roiling within her. She thought of Hudson, lying silent and still in his hospital bed, of Hope, innocent and unaware of the chaos surrounding her entry into the world, of Nicholas, whose kindness and support had become a lifeline she wasn't sure she could do without. As the sun began to set over the park, casting long shadows across the path, Stella made a decision. It was time to stop reacting to the curveballs life threw at her and start taking control of her own story. She would fight for Hudson's recovery with everything she had, be the best mother she could be to Hope, and find a way to honor the feelings growing between her and Nicholas without betraying the vows she had made. It wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was fraught with challenges: Hudson's uncertain recovery, the demands of motherhood, the complexities of her evolving relationship with Nicholas, and the ever-present pressures of running a multi-billion-dollar tech company. But as Stella turned her wheelchair back toward the hospital, a new sense of purpose filled her. She had survived the accident that took her ability to walk. She had endured the trauma of assault and the isolation of a secret pregnancy. She had weathered betrayals, both real and imagined, and come out stronger. Whatever came next, Stella knew she had the strength to face it. As she entered Hudson's hospital room, Hope sleeping peacefully in the carrier attached to her wheelchair, Stella felt a renewed sense of hope. She took Hudson's hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm here, my love," she whispered, "and I'm not giving up on you, on us. We're going to get through this, all of us, together." In that moment, as the machines beeped steadily and the New York night settled in around them, Stella allowed herself to imagine a future where everything worked out, where Hudson woke up, where they raised hope together, where her company continued to change the world for the better. It was a future worth fighting for, and Stella was ready for the battle. Little did she know, the biggest challenges and the most profound revelations were yet to come. As she sat there holding Hudson's hand and watching over their daughter, the wheels of fate were already in motion, setting the stage for a series of events that would test her resolve, challenge her beliefs, and ultimately lead her to a truth more startling than anything she could have imagined. The journey of healing and growth had only just begun, and Stella Blackwood was about to discover depths of strength, love, and resilience she never knew she possessed. In the crucible of adversity, she would be remade, emerging not just as a survivor but as a beacon of hope for others facing their own impossible odds. As the night deepened, Stella settled in for another long vigil by Hudson's bedside. But this time, there was a fire in her eyes and a determination in her heart. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it head-on, armed with the love for her family, the support of unexpected allies, and an unwavering belief in her own ability to overcome. The stage was set for the next chapter in Stella's extraordinary journey, a chapter that would redefine her understanding of family, test the limits of cutting-edge technology, and force her to confront the true meaning of love, loyalty, and redemption. The steady hum of medical equipment had become a constant backdrop to Stella's life over the past months. She'd grown accustomed to the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors, the soft whoosh of the ventilator, and the quiet murmur of nurses making their rounds. But on this particular morning, as she sat by Hudson's bedside, something felt different. Stella had just finished reading the latest clinical trial results to Hudson, a habit she'd developed, hoping that somewhere in his unconscious mind, he was absorbing the information. Hope, now 6 months old, gurgled happily in her lap, her tiny hands reaching out towards her father's still form. It happened in an instant, a twitch of Hudson's finger, so slight that Stella thought she might have imagined it, but then his eyelids fluttered, and a low groan escaped his lips. "Hudson?" Stella's voice was barely a whisper, hope and fear warring within her. "Hudson, can you hear me?" Slowly, painfully, Hudson's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confused, but as they settled on Stella's face, a spark of recognition flickered to life. "Saint Stella?" His voice was hoarse from disuse, but to Stella, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. Tears streamed down Stella's face as she pressed the call button for the nurse. "Yes, it's me. Oh, Hudson, you're awake. You're really awake." The room was soon flooded with medical staff, all eager to assess Hudson's condition. Stella found herself ushered to the side, clutching Hope tightly as she watched the doctors run through their tests and checks. It was hours before they were alone again. Hudson's recovery was nothing short of miraculous, the doctors said. While he would need extensive physical therapy to regain his strength, his cognitive functions seemed largely intact. As night fell and the hospital quieted, Stella finally had a moment alone with Hudson. She wheeled herself to his bedside, Hope sleeping peacefully in a bassinet nearby. "How long?" Hudson asked, his voice stronger now but still tinged with confusion. "Almost 7 months," Stella replied softly. We weren't sure you'd ever wake up." Hudson's eyes widened as the implications sank in. His gaze drifted to the sleeping baby, then back to Stella. "The baby, our daughter." Stella nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Her name is Hope. She's perfect, Hudson. Would you like to hold her?" With trembling arms, Hudson cradled his daughter for the first time. The love that bloomed on his face was unmistakable, and for a moment, Stella allowed herself to believe that everything might be okay. But as the initial joy of Hudson's awakening faded, reality began to set in. There were still so many unresolved issues between them, so many secrets and pain to work through. "Stella," Hudson said one evening, about a week after he'd regained consciousness, "we need to talk about everything." Stella nodded, steeling herself for the conversation she'd both longed for and dreaded. "You're right. Where do you want to start?" "Hannah," Hudson said, his voice tight. What happened with her? The last thing I remember clearly is finding out about her supposed pregnancy. Stella took a deep breath, then recounted everything. Hannah's deception, the private investigators' findings, and their final confrontation in Central Park. Hudson listened in stunned silence, his face a mask of shock and anger. I can't believe it, he said when Stella finished. All this time I've been carrying this guilt, thinking I'd betrayed you, and it was all a lie. I'm so sorry, Hudson, Stella said, reaching for his hand. I should have told you my suspicions sooner. With the accident and everything else, I didn't want to add to your burden. Hudson squeezed her hand, a sad smile on his face. We've both been carrying too many secrets, haven't we? But Stella, there's something else we need to discuss. Something I remember from before the accident. Stella felt her heart rate quicken. She knew what was coming, had been dreading this moment since Hudson first opened his eyes. Hope, Hudson said softly. She's not mine, is she? Biologically, I mean. Tears welled up in Stella's eyes as she shook her head. No, she's not. But Hudson, I need you to know... It's okay, Hudson interrupted, his voice gentle. I remember you telling me about what happened at the rehabilitation center. It's all a bit fuzzy, but I remember. And Stella, it doesn't change how I feel about Hope, or about you. Relief washed over Stella, so profound it left her breathless. You mean that? Even after everything? Hudson nodded, reaching out to caress her cheek. I love you, Stella, and I love our daughter. These past months, they've given me a lot of time to think, even if I wasn't conscious for most of it. Life's too short for resentment or blame. What happened to you was terrible, but it doesn't change who you are or how I feel about you. As they embraced, both crying now, Stella felt a weight lift from her shoulders. But even as she reveled in this moment of reconciliation, a nagging guilt tugged at her heart. The image of Nicholas, his kind eyes and unwavering support, flashed through her mind. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Hudson threw himself into his physical therapy with determination, making rapid progress. Stella divided her time between the hospital, caring for Hope, and managing her company from afar. And through it all, Nicholas remained a constant presence, his support unwavering. It was during one of Nicholas's visits to the hospital that things came to a head. He had stopped by to discuss the progress of the neural interface project that had helped in Hudson's recovery. As he and Stella pored over the latest data, Hudson watched them from his bed, a strange expression on his face. You two seem to work well together, Hudson observed, his tone carefully neutral. Stella and Nicholas exchanged a quick glance, an unspoken current of tension passing between them. Nicholas has been an incredible help these past months, Stella said, trying to keep her voice steady. I don't know how I would have managed without him. Hudson nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Nicholas. And I'm grateful for that, for everything you've done for my family, Nicholas, but I can't help but wonder, is that all there is to it? The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. It was Nicholas who finally broke the silence. Hudson, I want you to know that nothing inappropriate has happened between Stella and me. I respect your marriage and I would never... But you have feelings for her, Hudson interrupted, his voice surprisingly calm. It's written all over your face every time you look at her. Nicholas opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again, unable to deny the truth. Stella felt her heart racing, torn between the desire to defend Nicholas and the fear of hurting Hudson. I think, Hudson said slowly, that we all need to have an honest conversation. No more secrets, no more unspoken truths. We owe each other that much, don't we? And so, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, with Hope napping peacefully in the hospital's nursery, Stella found herself facing the two men who had come to mean everything to her. Hudson propped up in his hospital bed, looking stronger every day, and Nicholas sitting in a chair by the window, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy. I'll start, Hudson said, his voice steady. Stella, I love you. I always have, and I always will. These past months have shown me just how precious our relationship is, and how easily it can be taken away. I want us to work through this to rebuild what we had. He turned to Nicholas, his expression softening. And Nicholas, I can never repay you for what you've done for my family. You were there for Stella when I couldn't be, and I'll always be grateful for that. But I need to know, what are your intentions? Nicholas took a deep breath, his gaze moving between Hudson and Stella. I care deeply for Stella, and for Hope. These past months, watching Stella's strength and resilience being there for her and the baby, I've developed feelings that I never intended to have. But Hudson, I want you to know that I would never act on those feelings. Your marriage, your family, that's sacred to me. Stella felt tears welling up in her eyes as she listened to the two men bare their souls. When they both turned to her, expectant, she knew it was her turn to speak her truth. I love you, Hudson, she began, her voice wavering. You're my husband, the father of my child, and my partner in every sense of the word. What we've been through, it's tested us in ways I never imagined possible, but we've survived it all. She turned to Nicholas, her heart aching. And Nicholas, you've become such an important part of my life. Your support, your kindness, your brilliance, they've been my lifeline these past months. I can't deny that I've developed feelings for you too. The room fell silent as the weight of Stella's words settled over them. It was Hudson who finally broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. So, where do we go from here? He asked. Because I don't think any of us want to lose what we have. Nicholas leaned forward, his expression earnest. I have a proposal, he said. One that might sound unconventional, but I think it could work for all of us. Stella and Hudson exchanged a curious glance before turning their attention back to Nicholas. I've been working on a new project, Nicholas continued. A sustainable community in upstate New York, built around cutting-edge green technology and medical research. It's designed to be a haven for innovators, a place where we can develop solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. I want both of you to be a part of it, he turned to Stella. Imagine the advancements we could make in adaptive technology, combining your AI expertise with our medical research. And Hudson, your skills as a surgeon would be invaluable as we develop new treatments and therapies. What exactly are you proposing, Nicholas? Stella asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Nicholas took a deep breath. I'm proposing a partnership, professional and personal. A chance for all of us to work together, to raise hope in an environment of innovation and discovery, and perhaps a chance to explore the feelings we've developed in a way that's open and honest. The room fell silent as the implications of Nicholas's proposal sank in. Stella felt her heart pounding, her mind a whirlwind of emotions and possibilities. Hudson was the first to speak. Are you suggesting some kind of polyamorous arrangement? Nicholas nodded slowly. I know it's unconventional, but given everything we've been through, everything we feel, doesn't it make sense to at least consider it? We could all be there for Hope, supporting each other, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in our work and our personal lives. Stella looked between the two men, her mind reeling. Part of her was shocked by the suggestion, but another part, a part she was almost afraid to acknowledge, felt a thrill of excitement at the possibility. I don't know what to say, she stammered. This is a lot to process. Hudson reached out, taking her hand. We don't have to decide anything right now, he said gently. This is a big decision, one that affects all of us, including Hope. We should take some time to think about it, to really consider what it would mean. Nicholas nodded in agreement. Of course, I don't expect an answer right away. I wanted to put it out there, as a possibility. As the conversation wound down, Stella felt as though she were standing on the edge of a precipice. Behind her lay the familiar, her marriage to Hudson, the life they had built together. Ahead, a new frontier, a chance to redefine love, family, and partnership in a way she had never imagined possible. The next few days were a blur of intense conversations, soul-searching, and emotional turmoil. Stella spent hours talking with Hudson, revisiting their history, their struggles, and their dreams for the future. She had long, heartfelt discussions with Nicholas, exploring the depth of their connection and the potential of what they could achieve together. Through it all, Hope remained at the center, a constant reminder of the stakes involved, of the need to make decisions not just for themselves, but for the future of their child. It was a week after Nicholas's proposal that Stella found herself standing on the roof of the hospital, watching the sun set over the Manhattan skyline. She had come here to think, to try and quiet the cacophony of thoughts and emotions swirling within her. As she gazed out at the city, Stella reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The accident that had changed her life, the trauma she had endured, the lies and secrets that had nearly torn her world apart, but also the love that had sustained her, the resilience she had discovered within herself, and the unexpected connections that had given her strength. She thought of Hudson, of the life they had built together, and the challenges they had overcome. She remembered the moment she had first held hope, the overwhelming love she had felt for this tiny being, who represented both her greatest joy and her deepest pain. And she thought of Nicholas, of his unwavering support, and the spark of possibility he had ignited within her. The chance to not just rebuild her life, but to reimagine it entirely. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Stella felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She knew what she had to do. Making her way back to Hudson's room, Stella found both men waiting for her. They looked up as she entered, their faces a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. "I've made my decision," Stella said, her voice steady and clear. "But before I tell you what it is, I need you both to understand something. Whatever happens, whatever we decide, hope has to come first. Her well-being, her future, that's non-negotiable." Both men nodded solemnly, and Stella took a deep breath before continuing. "Hudson, you're my husband. We've been through so much together, and the love we share, it's the foundation of everything. I don't want to lose that." She turned to Nicholas. "And Nicholas, what you're offering, the chance to make a real difference in the world, to push the boundaries of what's possible, it's incredible. And the connection we've developed, it's something I can't ignore." Stella paused, looking between the two men who had come to mean so much to her. I think we should try. All of us. Together. It won't be easy, and we'll have to figure out a lot as we go. But if we're honest with each other, if we communicate and respect each other's boundaries, I believe we can make this work." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Then, slowly, Hudson reached out, taking Stella's hand in his. "If this is what you want," he said softly, "then I'm willing to try. For you, for hope, for all of us." Nicholas stood, moving to Stella's other side. "I promise," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "to always be honest, to respect what you and Hudson have, and to do everything in my power to make this work." As the three of them stood there, linked together in a moment of shared understanding and commitment, Stella felt a wave of emotion wash over her. It wasn't just relief or happiness, it was a sense of possibility, of a future unfolding before her that was bigger and brighter than anything she had dared to imagine. "So," she said, a smile playing on her lips, "when do we start building this sustainable community of yours, Nicholas?" Nicholas laughed, the tension in the room breaking. "As soon as Hudson's well enough to travel, I can't wait to show you both the plans." As they began to discuss the details, the technology they would develop, the life they would build together, Stella felt a sense of excitement building within her. This wasn't just a new chapter in her life, it was a whole new book, one she would write together with the two men beside her and the daughter who had brought them all together. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. The world might not understand or accept their unconventional arrangement, but as Stella looked at Hudson and Nicholas, as she thought of hope and the future they could create together, she knew that they were strong enough to face whatever came their way. This was their chance to redefine family, to push the boundaries of love and partnership. It was an opportunity to heal old wounds, to forgive past mistakes, and to build something truly extraordinary. As the night settled over the city, Stella Blackwood, tech mogul, mother, wife, and now pioneer in more ways than one, felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever the future held, she was ready to face it, surrounded by love and driven by a shared vision of a better world. The journey that had begun with a tragic accident had led her here, to this moment of new beginnings. And as she looked out at the twinkling lights of Manhattan, Stella knew that the greatest adventure of her life was just beginning. As the reality of their decisions settled in, Stella, Hudson, and Nicholas began to plan for their future together. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, filled with intense discussions, logistical planning, and emotional adjustments. Hudson's recovery continued to progress rapidly, fueled by his determination to be an active part of their new life. Stella divided her time between overseeing the transition of her company's leadership, caring for hope, and working with Nicholas on the plans for their sustainable community. One sunny afternoon, as they sat in Hudson's hospital room reviewing architectural plans, Stella felt a sudden pang of doubt. "Are we really doing the right thing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're making a huge mistake?" Hudson reached out, taking her hand in his. "Stella, look at me," he said gently. "We've always been risk-takers, you and I. It's how we built our careers, our life together. This is just another leap of faith." Nicholas nodded in agreement. "And we're taking it together, all of us. We'll figure it out as we go along." Stella smiled, feeling reassured by their words and the warmth of their support, but she knew that the real challenges were yet to come. As news of their unconventional arrangement began to spread, they faced a barrage of reactions from friends, family, and the media. Some were supportive, intrigued by the idea of a new kind of family structure. Others were skeptical or outright hostile, questioning their morals and predicting disaster. Through it all, Stella, Hudson, and Nicholas stood united, presenting a united front to the world. They gave carefully worded interviews, explaining their vision for the sustainable community and how their personal arrangement would allow them to push the boundaries of innovation and family life. Finally, the day came for them to leave Manhattan and embark on their new adventure. As their convoy of vehicles wound its way through the lush countryside of upstate New York, Stella felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The sustainable community, which they had named New Horizon, was everything Nicholas had promised and more. Nestled in a picturesque valley, it was a marvel of green technology and innovative design. Solar panels and wind turbines dotted the landscape, providing clean energy for the entire complex. State-of-the-art research facilities stood alongside cozy family homes, all built with sustainable materials and designed for maximum efficiency. As they pulled up to their new home, a spacious modern structure with plenty of room for all of them, Stella felt a sense of awe wash over her. This was it, the beginning of their new life together. The first few months were a period of adjustment for all of them. They had to learn to navigate the complexities of their new relationship dynamic, while also managing the demands of running a cutting-edge research community. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and jealousy to work through, but there were also moments of profound connection, shared triumphs, and a deepening bond between all of them. Stella threw herself into developing new adaptive technologies, working closely with both Hudson and Nicholas. Her experience as a wheelchair user, combined with Hudson's medical expertise and Nicholas's innovative approach to problem-solving, led to breakthroughs that would change the lives of millions of people with disabilities. Hudson, fully recovered and rejuvenated by their new environment, pioneered new surgical techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in medical science. He found a new purpose in training the next generation of doctors who came to New Horizon to learn and contribute to their groundbreaking work. Nicholas, for his part, continued to expand the scope of New Horizon, attracting brilliant minds from around the world and fostering an environment of collaboration and creativity. He also proved to be a loving and attentive co-parent to Hope, his bond with the little girl growing stronger each day. As for Hope, she thrived in this unique environment. Surrounded by love and intellectual stimulation, she grew into a curious, compassionate child with a keen interest in science and technology. The unconventional nature of her family became normal to her, and she developed a deep bond with all three of her parents. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset, Stella reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The accident that had changed her life, the trauma she had endured, the lies and secrets that had nearly torn them apart, all of it had led to this moment. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," she said softly, looking at Hudson and Nicholas. "But I wouldn't change it for anything." Hudson smiled, squeezing her hand. "Neither would I. We've created something truly special here." Nicholas nodded in agreement. "We've redefined what family can be, and in doing so we've opened up possibilities not just for ourselves, but for others who might be struggling to fit into traditional molds." As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Stella felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. She had faced unimaginable challenges, made difficult choices, and taken risks that once would have seemed impossible. But in doing so, she had found a kind of happiness and fulfillment she never knew existed. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges and obstacles to overcome. But as Stella looked at the two men beside her, as she thought of Hope sleeping peacefully inside, she knew that together they could face anything. This was their new horizon, a future built on love, innovation, and the courage to redefine what was possible. And as the night settled in around them, Stella Blackwood, once broken but now stronger than ever, felt ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. The end of this chapter was just the beginning of a new and extraordinary journey, one that would continue to push the boundaries of love, family, and human potential for years to come. As the seasons changed and New Horizon flourished, the unconventional family at its heart grew and evolved in ways none of them could have predicted. Stella, Hudson, and Nicholas had embarked on a journey that challenged societal norms and pushed the boundaries of love and partnership. Now, 2 years into their new life, the consequences of their decisions were becoming increasingly apparent. The sustainable community they had built together had become a beacon of innovation and progress. New Horizon attracted brilliant minds from around the world, all eager to contribute to the groundbreaking work being done in adaptive technologies, medical research, and sustainable living. Stella's company, now run day-to-day by a trusted CEO, had opened a research division within New Horizon, further cementing their position at the forefront of technological advancement. But it wasn't just their professional lives that had transformed. The personal dynamics between Stella, Hudson, and Nicholas had settled into a rhythm that, while unconventional, worked for them. They had weathered the initial storms of jealousy and uncertainty, emerging stronger and more committed to each other than ever. One crisp autumn morning, as Stella sat on the porch of their shared home, sipping her coffee and watching Hope play in the yard, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The accident that had left her paralyzed seemed like a lifetime ago, yet its impact still resonated through every aspect of her life. Hudson joined her, his hand gently squeezing her shoulder as he sat down. "Penny, for your thoughts?" he asked, a soft smile playing on his lips. Stella leaned into his touch, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Just thinking about how far we've come," she replied. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Hudson chuckled, shaking his head. "Not in my wildest dreams, but I wouldn't change it for anything." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching Hope's golden curls bounce as she chased a butterfly, Stella's mind drifted to Hannah. The woman who had once threatened to tear their lives apart had become an unexpected ally in their journey. After the truth about Hannah's deception had come to light, Stella had expected never to hear from her again. But life, as always, had other plans. 6 months into their new life at New Horizon, Hannah had reached out, her voice trembling with emotion over the phone. "I know I have no right to ask this," Hannah had said, "but I need help. I'm sick, Stella. Really sick, and I don't know where else to turn." Despite everything that had happened, Stella couldn't find it in her heart to turn Hannah away. With Hudson and Nicholas's support, they had invited Hannah to New Horizon, offering her access to the cutting-edge medical treatments being developed there. It hadn't been easy. The first few weeks were tense, filled with awkward silences and wary glances. But as Hannah underwent treatment for her aggressive form of cancer, something unexpected happened. Walls began to crumble, and understanding started to take root. Hannah, stripped of her defenses by illness and the genuine care she received, opened up about the desperation that had driven her to such extremes. She spoke of a life filled with disappointments and missed opportunities, of the crushing loneliness that had led her to seek validation through deception. Hudson, drawing on reserves of compassion Stella hadn't known he possessed, took charge of Hannah's treatment. His expertise, combined with the innovative therapies being developed at New Horizon, gave Hannah a fighting chance. As months passed, Hannah became an integral part of the community. Her experience in public relations proved invaluable as New Horizon gained more attention from the outside world. More importantly, she formed a genuine bond with Hope, becoming a kind of aunt figure to the young girl. The resolution of the conflict with Hannah had been a turning point for all of them. It proved that forgiveness and growth were possible, even in the face of betrayal and hurt. It also solidified the unique family unit they had created, showing that there was room for love and compassion beyond conventional boundaries. Stella was pulled from her reverie by the sound of Nicholas's voice. He was walking towards them, his face alight with excitement. "You won't believe the results we're getting from the new neural interface trials," he said, joining them on the porch. "We're seeing unprecedented levels of motor control in participants with spinal cord injuries." Stella felt a familiar thrill run through her. The work they were doing had the potential to change millions of lives, including her own. While she had come to terms with her paralysis, the possibility of regaining some function was still a powerful motivator. "That's incredible," she said, reaching out to take Nicholas's hand. "When can we start human trials?" As they fell into a discussion about the technical aspects of the trials, Stella marveled at how seamlessly Nicholas had integrated into their lives. The dynamic between the three of them had evolved into something beautiful and unique. Hudson and Nicholas had developed a deep friendship, bonding over their shared love for Stella and their passion for pushing the boundaries of medical science. There were still moments of adjustment, of course. Navigating a three-person relationship required constant communication and compromise. They had regular family meetings to discuss any issues or concerns, ensuring that everyone felt heard and valued. They also made sure to carve out one-on-one time for each pairing, maintaining the individual connections that formed the foundation of their unconventional family. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Hope came bounding up to the porch, her eyes shining with childish excitement. "Mummy, Daddy, Papa, Nick, can we go to the lake today, please?" The three adults exchanged fond glances. Hope's easy acceptance of their family structure was a constant source of joy and reassurance. To her, having three parents was the most natural thing in the world. "Of course, sweetheart," Hudson said, scooping her up into his arms. "Why don't you go get your swimming gear ready?" As Hope scampered off, Stella felt a sudden wave of emotion wash over her. "We're doing okay, aren't we?" she asked, looking between Hudson and Nicholas. "This crazy experiment of ours, and it's working?" Nicholas leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "More than okay, I'd say. We're thriving." Hudson nodded in agreement. "We've created something beautiful here, Stella. Something that works for us, regardless of what anyone else might think." Their words warmed Stella's heart, but she couldn't help but think of the challenges that still lay ahead. The outside world wasn't always as accepting of their unconventional family as the community they had built. There were still raised eyebrows and whispered comments when they ventured beyond the borders of New Horizon. But they had learned to face these challenges head-on, presenting a united front to the world. They gave interviews, wrote articles, and even hosted symposiums on alternative family structures and the future of relationships in a changing world. Slowly but surely, they were changing minds and opening hearts. As they prepared for their day at the lake, Stella's thoughts turned to the future. Hope would be starting school soon, and they would need to navigate the complexities of raising a child in their unique family structure within a broader societal context. But Stella felt confident that together they could handle whatever came their way. The day at the lake was filled with laughter, splashing, and the simple joy of family togetherness. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the water, Stella found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. She watched as Hudson taught Hope to float on her back, Nicholas nearby ready to assist if needed. The scene was so perfect, so filled with love, that it almost took her breath away. Later that night, as they tucked Hope into bed, the little girl asked a question that caught them all off guard. "Mummy, why don't all families have three parents like ours?" Stella exchanged glances with Hudson and Nicholas, silently communicating as they often did in moments like these. It was Stella who finally answered, choosing her words carefully. "Well, sweetheart, every family is unique. Some have two parents, some have one, and some, like ours, have three. What matters most is that there's love, and that everyone takes care of each other. And we have plenty of love in our family, don't we?" Hope nodded sleepily, seemingly satisfied with the answer. As they quietly left her room, Stella felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just building a life for themselves, they were paving the way for a more accepting, more diverse understanding of family and love. The next morning brought news that would once again reshape their lives. Stella, who had been feeling unusually tired and nauseous for weeks, finally gave in to Hudson and Nicholas's urging to run some tests. The results were unexpected, but not unwelcome. Stella was pregnant. The news was met with a mix of joy and trepidation. A pregnancy at Stella's age, combined with her spinal cord injury, presented unique challenges, but it also offered new hope and another chance to strengthen the bonds of their unconventional family. As they gathered in the living room to discuss this new development, the atmosphere was charged with emotion. Hudson, ever the doctor, was already outlining a care plan, while Nicholas researched the latest advancements in prenatal care for women with spinal cord injuries. "Are we ready for this?" Stella asked, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Another baby. It's going to change everything again." Hudson took her hand, his eyes filled with love and determination. "We've faced bigger challenges than this, Stella. Together we can handle anything." Nicholas nodded in agreement. "This baby is a gift, another chance to show the world what love and family can look like. We've got this." As the months passed and Stella's pregnancy progressed, their lives once again adapted to new circumstances. The entire New Horizon community rallied around them, offering support and assistance. Hannah, now cancer-free and an integral part of their extended family, took on the role of Hope's primary caregiver when the three parents were occupied with medical appointments or work commitments. The pregnancy was not without its complications. Stella's body, already challenged by her paralysis, struggled to adapt to the growing life within her. There were sleepless nights, worried consultations, and moments of fear. But there was also joy, anticipation, and an ever-deepening bond between Stella, Hudson, and Nicholas. As her due date approached, Stella found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point. The accident that had nearly broken her had instead set her on a path to an extraordinary life. She had faced trauma, betrayal, and societal judgment, emerging stronger and more resilient each time. The night Stella went into labor was a testament to the strength of their unconventional family. Hudson's medical expertise, Nicholas's unwavering support, and the advanced medical facilities of New Horizon all came together to ensure a safe delivery. After hours of labor, their son was born, a healthy, beautiful boy they named Ethan, a name that meant strong and enduring. As Stella held Ethan for the first time, surrounded by Hudson, Nicholas, and an excited Hope, she felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. This was her family, unconventional, complex, and absolutely perfect in its own way. The birth of Ethan marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. It brought new challenges, of course. Sleepless nights, the logistics of co-parenting between three adults, and the ever-present need to explain and sometimes defend their family structure to the outside world. But it also brought immeasurable joy and a deepening of the bonds between them all. As the weeks turned into months and months into years, Stella watched in awe as their family grew and evolved. Hope blossomed into a confident, compassionate young girl, fiercely protective of her little brother and proud of her unique family. Ethan, with his father's charm and Nicholas's insatiable curiosity, became the glue that bound them all even closer together. The work at New Horizon continued to push boundaries and change lives. Stella's adaptive technologies, combined with Hudson's surgical innovations and Nicholas's visionary leadership, led to breakthroughs that revolutionized the field of rehabilitation medicine. They saw people walk who had been told they never would again, watched as those who had lost limbs regained function through advanced prosthetics, and witnessed the joy of families reunited through the power of science and determination. But perhaps their greatest achievement was the slow but steady change they were effecting in society's perception of family and relationships. Through their openness about their unconventional arrangement, their dedication to their work, and the obvious love and stability they provided for their children, they were challenging long-held beliefs about what constituted a normal family. They faced criticism and skepticism, of course. There were still those who viewed their arrangement as immoral or unstable, but for every critic, there seemed to be 2 or 3 people who were intrigued, supportive, or inspired by their story. They received letters from people around the world who felt seen and validated by their example, who found the courage to pursue their own unconventional paths to happiness. As Stella sat in her office one afternoon, reviewing the latest data from their neural interface trials, she was struck by how far she had come. The woman she had been before the accident, driven, successful, but somewhat isolated in her pursuit of professional achievement, seemed like a stranger now. In its place was a Stella who had learned the true meaning of resilience, the power of vulnerability, and the limitless potential of love. She wheeled herself to the window, looking out over the bustling community they had built. New Horizon had grown beyond their wildest dreams, a testament to what was possible when brilliant minds came together with a shared vision. But more than that, it was a haven, a place where people could be their authentic selves, where innovation went hand in hand with compassion, and where the definition of family was as boundless as the human heart. As she watched Hudson and Nicholas in the distance, playing with Hope and Ethan in the community garden, Stella felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long and often difficult, filled with unexpected twists and painful revelations. But every step, every struggle had led her here, to a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. She thought of the young women who looked up to her, the aspiring scientists and entrepreneurs who saw in her story a roadmap for their own success. She thought of the countless individuals with disabilities whose lives had been transformed by the work they were doing at New Horizon. And she thought of her children, growing up in a world where love knew no boundaries and where the only limit to what was possible was the scope of one's imagination. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Stella made her way outside to join her family. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities to grow and learn. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by the love of her partners and the laughter of her children, Stella Blackwood was exactly where she was meant to be. This was not an ending, she realized, but a continuing beginning. Every day brought new chances to redefine what was possible, to push the boundaries of science and society, and to create a world where everyone could find their own version of happiness. And as she joined hands with Hudson and Nicholas, watching Hope and Ethan chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, Stella knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as partners, and as pioneers of a new way of living and loving. The story of Stella Blackwood, tech mogul, innovator, mother, partner, and survivor, was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning, and as the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Stella looked to the future with hope, determination, and an unshakable faith in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. This was her new horizon, vast and full of promise, and she was ready to explore every inch of it. 10 years had passed since the birth of Ethan, and New Horizon had blossomed into a thriving community that was changing the world in ways Stella Blackwood could never have imagined. As she sat in her state-of-the-art wheelchair on the balcony of the family's expanded home, overlooking the bustling, sustainable city they had built together, Stella reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. The woman she had been before the accident felt like a distant memory, driven and successful, yes, but also isolated and incomplete. The Stella of today was so much more: a pioneering technologist, a loving partner to both Hudson and Nicholas, a devoted mother to Hope and Ethan, and a beacon of hope for those facing seemingly insurmountable challenges. Her career had reached new heights. The adaptive technologies developed at New Horizon had revolutionized the lives of millions with disabilities worldwide. Stella's company, now a global leader in AI and neural interfaces, had recently unveiled a breakthrough that allowed those with severe spinal cord injuries to regain significant motor function. The image of a young woman taking her first steps after years of paralysis, using technology Stella had helped develop, was etched indelibly in her mind. But it wasn't just her professional achievements that filled Stella with pride. It was the family and community they had built together. Hope, now a teenager, was following in her mother's footsteps, showing a remarkable aptitude for both technology and compassion. Ethan, with his infectious laugh and boundless curiosity, kept them all on their toes and reminded them daily of the joy of discovery. Hudson and Nicholas had grown into their roles as co-parents and partners, with a grace that still amazed Stella. Their unconventional relationship had weathered its share of storms, but each challenge had only served to strengthen their bond. They had become a symbol of what was possible when love was allowed to flourish beyond traditional boundaries. As if summoned by her thoughts, Hudson appeared at the balcony door, a warm smile on his face. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, echoing a phrase that had become something of a tradition between them. Stella smiled, reaching out to take his hand. "Just reflecting on how far we've come. Did you ever imagine, back when we first moved here, that this is where we'd end up?" Hudson chuckled, shaking his head. "Not in my wildest dreams, but I wouldn't change a thing." Nicholas joined them, wrapping an arm around each of their shoulders. "Are we getting nostalgic out here?" he teased gently. As they stood together, looking out over the community they had built, Stella felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of fear, of societal judgment, but they had faced each challenge together, emerging stronger and more united. "You know," Stella said softly, "I used to think that the accident was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but now I see it differently. It was the catalyst that set us on this path." Without it, we might never have found our way to each other, to this life we've built." Nicholas nodded thoughtfully. "It's funny how life works out sometimes. The things we think will break us often end up being the things that make us stronger." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Hope appeared, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, Papa, Nick, you won't believe what Ethan and I just discovered in the lab." As Hope launched into an enthusiastic explanation of their latest experiment, Stella felt her heart swell with pride. Their children were growing up in a world where anything seemed possible, where love knew no boundaries, and where the only limit was the scope of their imagination. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a nightly tradition they had maintained despite their busy schedules, Stella looked around the table and marveled at the tapestry of love and connection they had woven together. Hannah, now cancer-free and an integral part of their extended family, was there too, engaged in an animated discussion with Hope about the ethical implications of AI. As the conversation flowed around her, Stella found herself thinking about the lessons she had learned on this extraordinary journey. She had discovered the true meaning of resilience, the power of vulnerability, and the limitless potential of love. She had learned that family could be defined not by blood or tradition, but by choice and commitment. And perhaps, most importantly, she had realized that it was possible to find purpose and joy even in the darkest of circumstances. The next morning, as Stella prepared for a keynote speech at an international conference on adaptive technologies, she felt a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness. Even after all these years, the thrill of sharing their work with the world never faded. As she made her way to the conference center, built within New Horizon itself, Stella couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. What had started as a dream of a sustainable community had grown into a global movement. New Horizon was now a model for cities around the world, showcasing how technology, sustainability, and compassion could come together to create a better future for all. Standing at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, scientists, engineers, policymakers, and individuals whose lives had been changed by their work, Stella felt a surge of emotion. This was her legacy, not just the technological advancements, but the lives touched, the minds opened, the possibilities unleashed. 10 years ago, she began, her voice strong and clear, I sat where many of you are sitting now. I was broken, both physically and emotionally. I thought my life was over. But what I didn't realize then was that it was just beginning. As she shared their story, the triumphs, the setbacks, the unexpected twists and turns, Stella saw heads nodding, tears being wiped away, and faces lighting up with hope and inspiration. The technology we develop here at New Horizon is incredible, she continued. It's changing lives every day, but the most powerful technology of all is the human heart. Its capacity for love, for resilience, for hope in the face of adversity, that's what truly changes the world. As she concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Stella felt a sense of completion. They had done it. They had taken their pain, their challenges, their unconventional love, and turned it into something beautiful and world-changing. But life, as always, had one more surprise in store. As Stella made her way off the stage, she was approached by a young woman with a familiar face, one she had seen in news reports and scientific journals. It was Dr. Amelia Chen, the brilliant neurologist who had recently made headlines with a groundbreaking discovery in spinal cord regeneration. "Ms. Blackwood," Dr. Chen said, her eyes shining with excitement, "I've been following your work for years. In fact, it was your story that inspired me to pursue this field. And now, I think we might have a breakthrough that could help you walk again." Stella felt the world tilt on its axis. After all these years, she had made peace with her paralysis, had built a life and a legacy that transcended her physical limitations. But the possibility of walking again, of feeling the grass beneath her feet, of dancing with Hudson and Nicholas. As Dr. Chen explained the procedure, a combination of stem cell therapy, neural implants, and intensive rehabilitation, Stella found herself imagining a new future, one she had long ago stopped dreaming about. Later that night, as she shared the news with Hudson, Nicholas, and their children, Stella realized that this wasn't an ending to their story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities for growth and love. As she looked around at the faces of her family, this beautiful, unconventional, perfectly imperfect family, Stella Blackwood knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. They had rewritten the rules of love, family, and human potential, and they were just getting started. The journey that had begun with a tragic accident had led her here, to a life beyond her wildest dreams. And as Stella drifted off to sleep that night, surrounded by the love of her partners and the quiet breathing of her children, she felt a sense of peace and excitement for what lay ahead. This was her new horizon, vast and full of promise, and she was ready to explore every inch of it, one step at a time. Stories like this have the power to touch the heart and enlighten the mind. If you felt this way, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters of this exciting journey. There's always one more story that can transform your day, and who knows, the next video might be just what you need. Click now, and we'll see you there.